thank you guys so much for being here tonight. I'm glad that each and every one of you chose to be here tonight. Because we all know substance abuse is not something that's easy to talk about, but here's the deal, we need to talk about it, and this is a call to action for everyone. If I knew then what I knew now about what addiction is, maybe the course of my life and my loved ones could have taken a different path. And so I'm going to take you back to the very beginning, to the quiet suburban neighborhood that I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia. Yes, I am a Southern girl. I am from Virginia. I consider myself a Southern girl. We were a very happy family. It was my mom and my dad, Butch and Leslie Sissler, and my older brother, Alan. But like most families, we were very busy, always on the go, whether it was football practice, basketball practice, baseball practice for my brother. You parents know all about that cycle, on and on and on. But for me, it was gymnastics practice, 4 days a week. During the summers, we spent a lot of time going to and from the neighborhood swimming pool, riding our bikes around, until, of course, we heard the whistle from good old Dad, that loud, piercing whistle from a block away, letting us know it was time to come in for dinner. My mom always had a hot meal on the dinner table. Of course, the picky one here, it was usually SpaghettiOs, macaroni and cheese, all the stuff that, of course, kids like. But I do remember those family dinners because it was an opportunity for us to all be together, to share things that were going on in our lives, talk about our report cards, our grades, our athletics, whatever it may be. But some of my fondest memories were the countless hours I spent in the backyard, jumping on my trampoline, practicing my floor routine. And for me, that was always awesome because I got to spend that time out in the backyard while my parents were mowing the lawn or washing the car, or whatever it may be. And there was no doubt that my parents always had a watchful eye on me and my brother, always taking great pride in what we were doing, being our biggest cheerleaders, picking us up when we were down, and lifting us up in our successes, and ultimately loving me and my brother Alan unconditionally. I'll never forget my very first level 10 national meet in gymnastics. We competed in Florida, and I'm on my third rotation, and it was the balance beam. And I'm going through each skill and each motion, and I'm doing a great routine, and next thing you know, I start to lose my balance. I start to wobble, and I fall. Thankfully, I was okay, but that disappointment just really welled up inside of me. And my mom could see the disappointment in my eyes, knowing that I felt that I had let them down and that I'd let my coaches down. But in that moment, it was silence in that arena. My mom jumped out of her seat and she said, "Lauren, it's okay. We're still going to Disney World." And I remember that. And that was a moment in my life that really lifted my spirits. And I knew in that moment everything was going to be okay. And we went to Disney World. And we had a blast. The thing is, in gymnastics, that became my sport. I grew stronger. I also grew taller. For those of you who don't know, most gymnasts are about 4'9", maybe 5'2". Without heels on, I am 5'9". So I kind of missed the mark just a little bit in this sport. Maybe I should have pursued the WNBA. That might have been a little better for me. However, I grew very competitive in the sport, started winning competitions, and really felt that this was an opportunity for me to take my career to the next level. College gymnastics. And that was something I dreamed of. Maybe this was an opportunity to repay my parents, to give back all the time that I spent in the gym every single day. I was training 20 to 25 hours a week, traveling to and from practice, hour-plus commute every single day. And now, maybe I could give back on this investment and pursue my dreams to be a collegiate gymnast. And so the offers started rolling in, and a few offers I got were from NC State, UNC, West Virginia University, and Rutgers University, the State University of New Jersey. Of course, Rutgers was never really on my radar until, of course, I went for an official visit. And really, that's all it took for me to fall in love with the campus fall in love with my teammates, my coaches, and really this new dream of going on to be a collegiate gymnast. And so I put the pen to paper, I signed my letter of intent, and I'm off to college. I still remember that day when I moved into my dorm room and we were unpacking the boxes and the last box was unpacked and I'm sitting there on my bed and I see my parents standing in the doorway and it's time to say goodbye. But of course it's never goodbye, it's always see you later. And I could see in their eyes that they were proud because their little girl had finally made it. So we'll fast forward to the second semester when I was at Rutgers. I was studying for some exams and getting ready for the next day. And as I always do, I picked up the phone and called my parents. Not a day went by that I didn't pick up the phone and call my parents. My mom answered the phone and I talked to her for a few minutes about practice. I had a good day. And then she handed the phone off to my father and said, how are things going? And my father and I talked a little bit about schoolwork and just about life in general. And it was a very short conversation. And then, before we hung up, I said, Mom, Dad, I love you. And both of my parents said, we love you too, Whoa. Whoa being my nickname. So I set my alarm clock, and I go to bed, and a few hours pass, and my phone rings. I look at the clock, and it's the middle of the night. And I'm thinking, oh, this can't be good. Who's calling me in the middle of the night? So I answer the phone, and I'm frantic. I'm out of breath, and I'm like, hello? And my dad is on the other end, and he says, Lauren, I need to talk to your brother. And I said, what's wrong, Dad? He said, Lauren, I just need to talk to your brother. And I could tell in his voice there was so much distress and hurt. I said, Dad, please tell me what's wrong. He said, Lauren, I'm sorry, but your mom died. And I said, what? Dad, what do you mean Mom died? I don't understand. What do you mean Mom died? What happened? And he said, Lauren, I'm sorry, I can't explain it now. Get on the next plane you can. I'll be at the airport to pick you up. So as you can imagine, all these emotions are flowing through me. I jump out of the bed. I start throwing stuff in my bag. I run downstairs, bang on my friend's door. I said, Craig, help me. He said, Lauren, what's wrong? And I said, I need a ride to the airport. My mom died. So we go to the airport, and it was as if it was a race against time. All I wanted to do, I wanted to get home. I wanted to see my dad. I wanted to know everything was going to be okay. My plane touches down in Roanoke, and I jump off that plane, and I start sprinting to the terminal. All I wanted to do in that very moment was run and jump in my dad's arms. And as I run outside, I'm standing on the curb. It's a very small airport. I'm looking everywhere for my father. He's nowhere to be found, and I just stand there for a few minutes waiting. And my dad never shows up. And instead, it's my Uncle Mike and my cousin Justin. And in that moment, I'm just thinking in my mind, everything's going to be okay. My dad's just taking care of stuff at the hospital. Everything will be okay. We get in the car, we start driving, and as we exit the airport, I finally worked up the courage to ask my Uncle Mike. I said, Uncle Mike, what happened to my dad? And I can still feel the gravel underneath the car as he pulled that car over, slammed on the brakes, and put it in park, and turned around and looked at me and said, Lauren, I'm sorry, but your dad's passed away too. And those words just cut me. What do you mean? How in the world does this happen within hours of each other? What happened? Please, someone tell me what happened to my parents. I still ask myself that very same question, even to this day, 16 years later. What happened to my parents? Unfortunately, it would be months before we would learn what ultimately stole both of my parents' lives. Prescription drug overdoses. Both of my parents within hours of each other. My mom just 45 and my dad 52. Do these look like people that were addicted to drugs? My mom was diagnosed with degenerative disc disease, and she had multiple surgeries over the course of time. My father had chronic back pain, and also suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, from his service in the military. Both of my parents had been seeking pain management from a doctor in Roanoke and had been prescribed multiple drugs, one of those being Oxycontin, the other being fentanyl. Fentanyl is a morphine, a type of morphine that is in a time-release pain patch, typically given to terminally ill patients in the end of their days. Were my parents terminally ill? Absolutely not. Why in the world were my parents taking this medication? The truth of it is, my parents were suffering in silence from their addiction. They were suffering in silence because of the stigma that surrounds addiction. They didn't want people to know that they were suffering. And so they kept it to themselves. And I think the hardest part is knowing my parents got out of bed every single morning with a smile on their face. And how could this happen to them? And how, as a family, could none of us know? Like, how could none of us know? And I think that's the one question I asked myself. How did I not know this was going on at 15 years old, 16 years old, 17 years old? March 24th, 2003 was the day that I lost both of my parents. And I think one of the hardest things is I'm getting set to get married here in a year. And I think to myself, I want nothing more than my father to be there to walk me down the aisle. I think that, and planning the wedding and knowing that he won't be there, my parents won't be there to share that first dance. My kids will never know their grandparents. And I will never ever pick up that phone again and hear my parents on the other end telling me they love me. And I think to me that is the biggest struggle that I have every single day. I live with this every single day. A harsh memory for me is when, just shortly after their passing, my brother and I were standing in our home, my parents' home, as a moving truck came up the driveway. 4 men got out of that truck, came into that house, and within 2 hours, every single thing in that house was cleared out. Every single piece of furniture, every painting on the wall, every piece of clothing, and all of that was auctioned off to the estate to complete strangers. And so all that I'm left with are a few pictures and a few things that my brother actually had to go back to the auction to purchase back. And I think that's the sad truth of it, is all of this stuff was because of addiction. But this is my new life and this is my new reality, and so now I've got to learn to live life without my parents. And I'm 18 years old, so what am I going to do here? I'm 18 years old, I didn't even know how to write a check. But I really was given no option, and by the grace of God, and thankfully my Aunt Linda and my Uncle Mike really took me under their wing and helped me sort of redefine my pathway to success. They said, Lauren, you have no choice, you've got to go back to school. So 2 weeks after burying both of my parents, I went back to school, I went back to Rutgers, because I knew it was the right thing to do. It was a commitment I had to my university, to myself, to my teammates, and I knew that's what my parents would want. But sadly, my dreams and everything that was still in front of me was becoming tarnished by all the emotions that were running through me every single day. Somebody that was an AB honor roll student, I was making C's and D's. I've never seen an F on a paper in my life. That became normal for me. I was in and out of the training room. I couldn't stay healthy. I couldn't compete. I couldn't give back to my team and give them what they wanted and really live up to the expectation of being on scholarship. And I think that was the hardest part for me, is knowing that I was drowning in my own shame, in my own denial, because I didn't want to accept what was happening. I didn't want to accept the fact that my parents were never coming back and the reasons that my parents were never coming back. But ultimately what I realized after about a year and a half, as I started to kind of climb back out of that hole, is that I had to control what is next. I can't control what happened, but I can ultimately take control of my own destiny and do something about it. And so really what I did was started to reevaluate myself, reevaluate what it is I can be good at, my passions. I wanted to be a sports doctor growing up. Unfortunately, that kind of went out the window. I think also becoming more mature and understanding what that took in terms of studying, and I'm a little bit squeamish these days. Those injuries on the basketball court, those rolled ankles, whoo, not something I enjoy looking at. So in May of 2006, I graduated with a communications degree and started putting those wheels in motion, because for me, sports broadcasting was something that maybe I could do, and I really found that it's become more of not just a passion for me, but a purpose. And so I started jumping around from TV station to TV station and landed here in 2011 in Birmingham, Alabama. And let me tell you, I had never thought of Birmingham, Alabama, but I love it here. I'm here to stay, whether you like it or not. You know, the one question I get a lot is, are you an Alabama fan or are you an Auburn fan? And I always tell people, I am a fan of whichever team I'm covering on any given day, because, oh, by the way, standing in a locker room after a national championship with grown men crying with a mic in their face is not fun. Not something I enjoy very much of. Also, I wear scarlet on my sleeve, so I have to remind people here when I'm wearing red, it is not crimson, my friends. It is scarlet. But I have to tell you one thing about my job that is so exciting. It isn't about the national championships, you know, the confetti falling from the field. It's funny, I was walking through the newsroom the other day at AL.com and kicked off this confetti from the national championship, but I hate to blow it to you Alabama fans, it was orange and purple. Wrong season, right? But that confetti represents so much more than a national championship. It represents stories. And I think that's what I'm so fortunate for, is to be able to share those stories and to be able to share the stories of others, because I believe that they have the ability to impact the lives of others. And I think my vision of that was once blurred because I wasn't even okay with my own story. I wasn't even honest with my own story. For me, it took 7 years to learn what ultimately took my parents' lives. 7 years. I didn't even pick up the toxicology reports for 10 years because I was in denial. I was in straight denial. I did not want to believe that either of my parents could be addicts. I could not use the word addiction or overdose in the same sentence with both my parents. No way these two people that were loved by so many were addicts. Ultimately, I didn't want to be judged because I felt that my legacy, my parents' legacy, was bound in my hands. And I felt that if I let people know ultimately what happened to them, we would be judged. But what happened is, over the years, my auntie Linda, started to break down those walls and help me to see what it really was. But ultimately, she said, Lauren, look, you can't dictate the opinions of others. You can't erase time. You can't change how your parents died. But ultimately, this is their story. This is reality. And what I found is, as I shared their story with more and more people, with courage and with strength and with honesty, they started to embrace me and my brother even more. There was no shame. There was no, wow, well, your parents are drug addicts. They said, you know what? Your parents came to work every single day. They got out of bed every single day and took care of you and your brother, and they have raised two fine young men and women. And I think that's what means so much to me. Finally, I have been set free. No more shame, no more guilt, no more denial. I have been set free, and I can now breathe. Because the truth of it is, nobody is exempt from life's difficult circumstances. Nobody. Not a single person. It doesn't matter where you're from, where you grew up, the job you have, the car you drive. Everyone is impacted by this disease of addiction. And I think what you have to realize is you have the freedom of choice. You have the freedom to choose how you're going to respond to adversity, no matter what it is. Because everybody's got a story. Everybody's going through something. Do we take a similar path? Is it our excuse, our hall pass? Well, you know, when they went down that road, I guess this is the road I'm destined to go down. Do we sweep it under the rug and pretend like it never happened? Or do we step up to the plate and do something about it as a community? Educate ourselves, empower ourselves to go out there and do something about it. There's a prevention element, and there's also hope and recovery. And I think those are the things we need to realize. We can get in front of this thing And I think it is so important that you realize addiction is a family disease. It wreaks havoc on anything and everything that stands in its way. And ultimately, it will stare you in the face and it will suck the joy out of you. In my opinion, addiction is the thief of all joy. And I think what we have to realize is that our children and our communities are faced with this thing. Addiction is waiting to prey on your children and take them to a place that nobody should ever be, because it is a scary place. And so I just want to say thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for this opportunity to share my story. And I really hope that you guys brought some notebooks, some pens and papers. We got it up here because we got some awesome speakers tonight that are going to give us some awesome information and equip us with the ability to go out and share with the rest of the world. So thank you again. I appreciate it.